Hey everyone, I've got a quick one for you. So I've been tinkering around with Gaia recently, and this is some Arrakis terrain I've been making, inspired by the Dune movies. Now, usually at the end of your pipeline in Gaia, you'll notice that the terrain tends to spike just in very small areas, but if you're trying to get close up to your terrain at any point, it's going to be very visible, very annoying. And I found that there aren't really any good ways of there aren't any nodes that combat this by themselves. I mean, there's a couple, but they tend not to maintain the detail of the terrain very well. Now, one option to combat this is the blur node. Now, what you'll notice is that the spikes are definitely still visible if you want to maintain a level of detail that is similar to the original mesh. Now, you can turn up the blur, but that is removing that detail that you want while getting rid of the spikes. And if you turn it too low, you keep the spikes. You're not getting rid of them, so we're not going to use that. Another option is the denoise node, which it kind of does the job, but not enough. The spikes are maybe getting chopped in half, and that's not enough. We want to get rid of those spikes entirely. Now, we can turn up the passes, but this tends to show a result very similar to the blur node, where you're losing detail everywhere else. Now, I've found a solution for this with about 9 or 10 nodes, which is not at all complex to set up, and it gives you results like this, where the spikes are completely gone, but we've maintained the detail that we want in our mesh. I'll show you what this looks like from afar. There's basically, I'd say the one downside of this is that you're losing a bit of sharpness, and if you really want those crisp close-ups, then you're going to have to do this. Otherwise, the spikes are just overwhelming. So I've just taken a choke point, which just reroutes the geometry so that we can have it in a neater window. So essentially, these spikes are a form of high frequency noise. And what we want to do is make a mask that filters out the high frequency noise. And there's a very simple way to do this. And it's very similar to a high pass in Photoshop, if you've ever used that before. And it's very simple. We're just changing a divide to a difference, essentially. So we're going to add a blur, and we can ignore the settings for now. Add a combine. And we are going to merge our original mesh with the blurred mesh. I'm going to turn the ratio to 1 and blend to difference. And then finally, we're going to press this button up here with the 3 lines and change height field to mask. Now, obviously, we can't see anything yet, so I'm going to enable auto level. And now we have sort of clamped to white and black. We have what we need. Now I'm going to press F on the combine node so we can continue to see that when I click on blur. And this isn't what we want just yet. So I'm going to right click the radius, and I'm going to keep clicking the half button until we eventually get to a stage where the whites are exactly where the spikes should be. Now this is a perfect example here. We've got some crazy spikes going on here. And as you can see, the tallest spike in the entire mesh is perfectly white. And that's what we want. I'm going to see if I can tune this down even more by halving the... Yep. Okay, there we go. Now essentially all the crazy spikes are white and all the rest of the geometry is black. The next thing I'm going to do is in this combine node, I'm going to enable the shaper. And this is just to sort of strengthen this mask or increase the amplitude. So I'm going to set the shaper value to 0.25, and that just brightens everything. And I'll show you what this mask is going into. So I'm going to add a combine and another blur. Our original geometry goes in the blur. I'm going to combine the original geometry with the blur again. But this time, we're keeping it on blend, and we're turning the ratio to 1. Let's just visualize this. I'm going to turn the blur down, but not as much as we did to get the spikes. I'm just going to turn it down until just before we get to see any spikes. I'd say this is probably a good value. I don't see any crazy spiking. In fact, maybe I'll double it just once. Yeah, that'll probably do. As you can see in the combine node, we've got this extra circle that's sitting outside of the box, and we're going to plug our mask into that. And what we have going on, if I compare with the original geometry, so as you can see, the spikes are getting shaved down, but not by a lot. And that's because not all spikes are a single pixel. Not all spikes are at the same frequency. So one thing I've figured out is that if we blur the mask just a little bit, and continue to auto level, we're going to blur so that we can see just a small ring around the spikes. Something like that should do. I'll show you the difference. We've just got a gradual fall off where spikes live, and that's what we can use to mask the blur a little easier. Now once again, the spikes aren't getting shaved down enough, so I'm going to add another shaper to the blur, set that at 0.25, and that is already way better. Yeah, you can see a few more, but compared to the original, this is a lot smoother. Now what I've decided to do is step it up a notch. I'm going to copy and paste this lot. And essentially we're doing two passes, one at the high frequency I mentioned before and one at a slightly lower frequency. Remember to change this to a mask again. And essentially what we're going to do here is we're going to turn up the frequency by a tiny amount. Might do 2x. No, let's do 4x. Okay, so what we've got is similar to the blurred high frequency mask we had before. But what we can do here is blur it yet again, maybe 2x that. And now remember, both the combine and the blur have an auto level and shaper of 2.5. So what we've got here is a higher frequency mask and a lower frequency mask. And how we use both masks at the same time is we're going to add one more combine node. I'm going to set that to add, ratio to 1. And now we have a mix of the two and at a higher strength. And if you look at this from the outside, you can see this mainly applies to the edges or sort of canyon parts of the mesh. Now let's put that mask into the blur. And the spikes are completely gone. Can't see a single one. If we look at the difference, we're pretty much only removing the spikes, which is amazing. We've kept the detail everywhere else on the mesh, and we've just gotten rid of those annoying spikes. Now, one thing I noticed is that you can turn the ratio from 1 to 0.8, or something just a bit lower, and you still can't see spikes, but we've retained even smidge more detail, which is really good. Now, you can see the tiniest amount of spikes there, but if you just mess around with the values a little bit, you might find that it remedies itself. Look at the difference. It's brilliant. But this spike here, oh, still there. That's why I change it to 1, and the spike's completely gone. Yeah, we've removed the spikes, retained the detail. That's what we like to see. All right, well, thank you all for watching. I hope this helped. And I'll see you in another video. Maybe. If I can be asked, you know?